believe one of the quotes that we talked about in one of the first episode or two, the integrative study of crosstalk between macro and micro elements, uptake and signaling in land plants will be of great significance and essential for sustainable agricultural and forestry development all around the world, right? So this is a relatively recent quote from October 21, Frontiers in Plant Science. This is what we're studying on a day-to-day basis here at Apical. And this is what we've been studying for the last 6 years. And there is a pie in the sky, right? From a data perspective, we're never going to probably reach a perfect plant, right? It may never exist. A plant that's grown under perfect conditions, it may never exist. We've seen some incredible data sets across multiple different crops, but the most commonly effective, really high quality data sets typically we find in nature, right? And so this is one of those things that we've discussed in previous episodes about how we use nature to drive algorithmic data models to produce better crop outcomes for our client base. The heart of this philosophy is that plants are autotrophs, and which that means they're capable of forming their own food under the appropriate environmental conditions. So I want you to think about that for a minute when we look at agriculture and how much time, money, energy goes into feeding our plants. They're capable of feeding themselves. That's not to say that this is going to be achievable from any overarching perspective on an agricultural basis, but they have the potential to do so. That potential isn't a 0 or 1 sum game. They can produce 10% of their own nutrition, 20%, 30%, 40%, 80%. So you can actually access and encourage your plants to produce some of their own food through proper nutritional practices, through proper environmental engineering, and so on. The plants are really interested more than in food and feeding, then they're more interested in gas exchange from what we found. Carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. When those elements are in balance, the rest of the system starts to open up. Those of you that studied Dr. William Albrecht and base saturation cation balancing ratios, you may have understood this from a little bit of a mineral perspective of the base saturation optimal ratios are designed to open up soils, flocculate soils, and provide soil aggregation. For those of you that may have been involved in the soil food web work, you'll also understand that there's a tremendous amount of interest from a microorganism perspective in having air circulation from top to bottom. But it gets so deeply interconnected. The plants breathe the CO2, they feed carbon back to the in the form of simple sugars back to the soil. There's nitrogen then fixed, and then that nitrogen gets taken by the plant, and so on and so forth. But all of these processes were short-circuiting when we perform modern agricultural practices. And so by looking at what we've discussed in previous episodes as the 10 fundamentals of nature, we can understand that the nutrient availability is not necessarily dependent on how much we put out there. It's going to be dependent more upon simple, balanced ratios from nutrient to nutrient, balanced ratios from gas to liquid, gas to solid, and liquid to solid. When these are inadequate, that's when we have to fertilize. So we can spend our time continually fertilizing and make that the game, or we can start to build long-term regenerative systems that can help to prevent degradation and improve soil health that will long-term provide benefits back to our farm in terms of economics and otherwise. Carbon is king. Thanks again very much, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.